Alright, hello. This video may possibly be working, I'm not sure. But I'm doing it anyway, and if it is working, there's no second takes. So hey, sorry that I'm not there. I'm actually at a parish council meeting thing. But decided, and Erin foolishly agreed to do video Bible study leading, which is this, I suppose. So let's begin. Let's see if my various things work. Last time we looked at the fall, and we saw that as mankind disobeyed God, then he kicks them out of the Garden of Eden, and we see some consequences of that. For example, here I've got a few written in. For instance, in Genesis chapter 4, verse 8, is where the story of Cain and Abel, where Abel kills Cain. So we've got murder occurring pretty soon after. Then in chapter 5, it's where there's like a giant list of different people who lived, starting at Adam and then his son Seth, and everyone ends in he died. So we've got death occurring, which occurs again and again. And this study, we're looking at more consequences of sin. Specifically, we're looking at the flood and all of the problems that were caused by mankind's sinfulness. So, to begin, we're going to read Genesis chapter 6, all the way to the end of Genesis chapter 9, which is a gigantic passage, I realize. So, come up with your own way to do the reading, and pause the video pretty much now, and I'll come back to say something else after. So pause now, please. Okay, hello, welcome back. Well done for pausing at the right time. Very impressive. So once again, here we are with this very high quality video. So you've read the passage. It was very long. I'm sure you have sort of heard the general storyline before, so we're going to dive straight in. So question 1, why did God send the flood? Discuss and pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. Well done for pausing the video. Question 2. Oh, actually, what you may have said in question 1, I don't know, but you probably said something along the lines of mankind's wickedness, and so God sent it as a punishment. Perhaps that was what you said. I don't know. Maybe that leads into question 2, however, which is, so perhaps the flood was sent as a punishment for sin, perhaps to make, I don't know what you said. But was the flood a good thing, or was it a bad thing? Did it have a purpose that was fulfilled or not? Anyway, question 2, there it is. Pause the video now and unpause it in 3. Okay, welcome back. Interesting discussion, I'm sure. Who knows? Perhaps I don't know. Not a clear-cut answer, I guess. So, interesting. Alright, question 3, and don't you dare read these other secret questions just yet. Okay, question 3. This one's just sort of for fun. There it is, part A. Check out Noah's sacrifice after the flood. It's kind of an interesting little bit, I guess. So, how many animals did Noah sacrifice? See if you can read. Part B did consider how many animals actually went on the boat and how many he sacrificed. Think about that. Also, consider, so if Noah sacrifices a bunch of animals, you must ask yourself, well, why does he do this? Because verses 8 and 9 tell us that God considered him righteous. So why did he burn those sacrifices? Discuss and pause the video now. Okay, unpause. Good. Question 4. Should have put these spaces in earlier. Professional quality, as you can see. Question 4. Read again the covenant between God and Noah. It probably goes for a bit longer than what you think, so make sure you read the whole thing, which goes through most of chapter 9 as well. So read that all and consider exactly what is it exactly that God promises Noah, and also would this count as a reversal of the curse? Is it sort of, are there any references to earlier parts of Genesis? Is it a full reversal of the curse? Is it a partial reversal of the curse? Is it something new? What is the promise exactly? Please discuss that now. Okay, welcome back. You probably discovered that the curse is not really actually a reversal, but it is a continuation of God sort of beginning to set up the beginnings of the first covenant, some sort of framework of God beginning to maybe indicate that he might resolve the problem of sin in the world instead of just complete destruction. I guess this is a story that sort of, one thing that it indicates is that God's plan is not just complete destruction of all of everything that he created and a complete start again. Because that's what this story could have been. It could have been a complete destruction of everything. However, it wasn't. God, in fact, saved Noah and, if you like, restarted the human race. So it kind of indicates that his plan is not destruction. There must be more to his plan than that. So there must be some sort of plan of salvation. If you want, you can discuss that further and by pausing now, or alternatively, we can proceed to question 5. Your choice. Either way, eventually you would proceed. So here we go. Before we ask this question, let's sort of vaguely recap. Everyone's sinful, all of mankind horribly wicked. God punishes them through the flood, annihilating almost everyone except for 8 people if you count them up. And that's a judgment. God does describe Noah as a righteous man, so you may lead you to think, well, perhaps one of your early answers was maybe the flood was to deal with sinfulness. But then obviously, as we read further in the Bible, we encounter again, for example, in Romans, where it again has a similar refrain of, no one is found righteous, no, not one. So obviously, the flood didn't solve the problem of sin, it just sort of punished sin. So obviously God, needs to punish sinners. There's something within God that needs to punish sin, which is probably a point you've already discussed. You could discuss it further about God's need to punish, him being all good. Can't let things sort of go unchecked. Anyhow, in this particular passage, we see at the very end of chapter 9 kind of a really random sort of aspect of the story. The bit where where Noah gets drunk and Ham goes and sees him naked, and of course his brothers covered him up, and then, which all seems, reasonably harmless, but then Noah curses Ham in a very, very extreme way, which you'll soon reread again. In fact, you could reread that right now if you like. But anyway, he curses him in a very extreme way, as you have read, which makes me think, well, why does Ham get cursed so severely when it seems as though all he did was see his father both drunk and naked in a tent, which doesn't seem too bad. In fact, I'm sure some of you have seen someone drunk and naked in a tent and you thought, this isn't, it was an accident or something, not too bad. So why is the curse so very, very severe? Interesting question to ask. To help us answer it, please read up on Leviticus chapter 18. Maybe that'll help you investigate. So please pause the video now, read up on Leviticus, discuss what discuss what is the deal with that bit at the end of chapter 9. Do that now. Okay, hopefully you just had a read of Leviticus chapter 18. You had a bit of a discussion. You probably saw a phrase about what it means to, again and again in Leviticus chapter 18, it says, do not see, do not see your father's nakedness, do not see your mother's nakedness, do not see your sister's nakedness, and so on and so forth. And it's not so much about, actually just viewing someone who is not wearing clothes. In Leviticus chapter 18, it's actually used as a euphemism. The entire chapter is actually a big section about a big warning against and law against incest, which I suppose is a good thing to listen to, which is very interesting. So anyway, if you are a little bit squeamish, maybe block the ears now. Essentially what commentators sort of think, and what various people sort of have deduced, is that when it says that Ham saw his father's nakedness, is actually talking about a sexual act. So most likely people think that Ham went and actually raped his father, which is quite an extreme thing, actually. So who knows why? I guess this argument is strengthened by more than just Leviticus. Strengthened by the fact that when Noah curses Ham, it is so extreme. So obviously what he did must surely have been extreme. Also, later on, if we kept reading, if we read into Exodus, for instance, when God commands the Israelites to go into the promised land, the land of Canaan, Canaan being Ham's son, it talks about what's so wrong with the Canaanites. It talks about one of the biggest things against them is that they are very sexually immoral, practicing homosexuality and rape quite frequently. So that perhaps adds a little bit of strength. Okay, so we have an idea now about what it was actually maybe a bit sort of, describing. But other than obviously Noah having cursed Ham and therefore Canaan, is quite central to the idea of, the promised land later on. But if we, put that to one side for a moment, in terms of just this story, we need to ask the question, well, what's kind of the point? What's the point that the author's making with this end bit of chapter 9? Why is it tacked on? Why is it part of the story of Noah and the flood? So if you have not yet discussed that, please pause this video now and have a quick little discussion about it. Pause now. Okay, you've either decided you already discussed it or you've just unpaused, in which case perhaps you've seen that Noah, even though at the start he was seen to be a righteous man, you can see that him and his family and sort of descendants are well and truly sinful. The problem of sin has not been solved, not even close. Things, in fact, in some ways, like the graphic detail we're told, is in some ways worse than just sort of death. The things that came before, even though we were told that the inclination of their hearts was wickedness. So we can see the big point, I suppose, is that sin has not been dealt with. The central problem of sin has definitely not been dealt with. So the whole story of Noah does not solve the problem of sin. It just shows us God's reaction to it and punishment of it. Interesting then. So anyway, think for yourselves. If the flood did not solve the problem of sin, what did it achieve? What's the point of it? Discuss that now, if you haven't already. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you discussed it very well. An interesting thing to do. We've kind of looked at the main point now of the whole study, but some extra things that I think are a bit interesting. Firstly, I find it interesting to think about what the New Testament, how the writers of the New Testament sort of understand, how they understand this story. One thing you probably discussed was that the flood's kind of a picture of God's judgment, a picture of destruction, perhaps a bit of a preemptive picture of hell and of God's judgment in hell. But what else? What else does the New Testament have to say about it? Please, there's 2 references there on the screen, Matthew 24, 37 to 39, and also Hebrews 11, verse 7. The Hebrews one you may need to read a little bit further than just verse 7 to really sort of understand. Check those out. Pause the video. I'll be back soon. Welcome back. If you haven't yet looked at those things and discussed them, then pause still. However, if you have looked at them, you probably saw from Matthew that the flood is used as a bit of a picture of not knowing the day at which final judgment will happen, just in the way that Noah didn't know what time the flood would actually come. He just had to faithfully trust God and follow him. That idea sort of leads into the Hebrews one. The Hebrews passage is all about being faithful to God and how faith is actually is a necessary response. You need to have faith in order to obtain salvation. I suppose this is quite a lot like Noah, in that Noah, even though God found favor on him, he still needed to have the right response. He still needed to have faith. It was quite a long time of building and of ridicule that he had to endure. So there's a little message in that for us. Pause now if you want to discuss further. Otherwise, let us proceed. Okay. Some classic questions going on here. First up, if you're thinking about our own situation, have a go if you wish at explaining to someone, or how would you explain to someone that the world deserves God's judgment? So do that in any way you so desire. Do that now. Coming up after you've paused is question 8, which I will say now. So pause quickly. Question 8 is sort of like a part 2 to that, which is as follows. You actually probably do know a non-Christian who's pretty perfect and blameless in the eyes of society. Maybe they do a lot of charity work. I don't know. Would you change your answer a bit if you had to specifically talk about them? Like, what if their reaction is, what, me? I do everything perfectly. How could I be even better? How could you explain to them that they too deserves God's judgment? A little bit trickier. Pause the video and come back now. Okay, it's probably getting on in the evening, so it's time to do some prayer. And the way that we're actually primarily going to do prayer is in triplets. So what we kind of want is to set up these triplets. We've probably got enough people, maybe for 2 girl ones, I don't know, maybe. And maybe 1 to 2 boys, perhaps. Make sure you allocate the people who aren't here to some of those groups. The general idea being that these people can, get to know each other on a more personal level than just the whole group level and be comfortable to share things. So now could be a good time to break into prayer. I'm not sure, as I'm not there. Option B, and you could leave the whole night there. Option B is, I came up with kind of a selection of random stuff that you could ponder if you wish to. Maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not, I don't know. So a couple of thoughts. First, let's just quickly sort of note these before I give any of my own thoughts. So one thought some of you may have had is, what's the deal with everyone living so old? Why don't we say that now? Another thing that sort of has come up in the leaders' meeting is the word where it says that the flood covers the whole earth is a bit sort of vague. It could also mean just covered the land rather than earth. So some people wonder, was the flood global over the entire earth, or was it only global in terms of where humans were living? I mean, anyway, there you go. Possible thing to discuss. Or thirdly, maybe you're having a discussion about whether or not the flood actually happened. Or was it just a story that's there to really illustrate a point about God and who he is? Maybe you thought about that. Or maybe you are talking about how you can talk about the flood with non-Christian people who think the flood is a ridiculous part of the Bible, a thing that is just one of the hardest things perhaps to believe out of almost all of the whole Bible. So that's something that you could choose to talk about. Maybe you're actually thinking more about what's the deal with that whole gigantic section about how the flood subsides. Goes for ages. It's like pretty much the whole of chapter 8 talking about, how the flood subsides. Maybe like, why is it all necessary? Why didn't it just say, flood went down after a while and Noah, burned his sacrifices? There's a lot of detail, particularly about how much time went into all the different intervals of the flood receding. So I don't know. That could be something you're thinking about. Or maybe you're having a silly conversation about that guy a couple of years ago who built a life-size recreation of the Ark. And maybe you're thinking about, was that a good idea or not? Maybe there's other... Don't know why I threw that in, but I did. So there you go. You can discuss or not. Maybe I won't throw any of my own thoughts on. I was going to, but I've decided not to. Maybe we'll discuss them next week. Maybe you'll never know and can think about them in your own time. Anyhow, Bible study over. Catch you later.